It's November 7th, which means it's D-Day for gay marriage. They're gonna take gay marriage from us. They're gonna take gay marriage from us. They're gonna take gay marriage from us. Or is it? Either way, today I'm going to talk to you guys about why I think gay marriage will probably never be fully legal with any permanence. And by the end of this video, I'll let you know what I think the play should be from the gay community. And to kick that off, I'm going to start by telling you I don't know how a gay couple or gay people can look at a person like this.
Hey y'all, Denise Hernandez here, the queer chingona judge out of Texas. I'm here to talk about what just came out of the Texas Supreme Court. Recently, they changed their judicial rules stating that judges no longer have to perform wedding ceremonies for LGBTQ couples. As a proud, openly gay, masculine presenting woman, I'm here to say that I will continue to provide safe and affirming wedding ceremonies for all LGBTQ plus couples in Texas. If you're looking to get married, you are welcome in my courtroom. You don't have to fear rejection. Just reach out and we will provide a safe space for you to get married.
And while this is a woman that uses her identity a little too much for my liking, I don't know how a gay couple could know that there's a person like this and many others like her that are willing to officiate their marriage, but instead they say, I want the one that doesn't want to do it, which to me makes it seem like it's a little more about control than actually getting what you want done. But really that should make sense to me because that really seems to be what the LGBTQ plus community is actually about.
And we've been able to balance religious liberty and, the beliefs that people have along with marriage.
But we really haven't been able to balance religious liberty and the beliefs that people have with marriage because the LGBTQ community wants to constantly force people to do things that they don't want to do.
If you don't like same-sex marriage, don't look at it. Don't marry the same. It's as simple as that.
And that's kind of what a lot of these caterers and cake makers are saying when they're saying that they don't want to provide services for gay marriage. So while you're trying to make it seem like it's as simple as not doing these particular things, the LGBTQ community refuses to let it be as simple as you're trying to make it sound. What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, so one of the things I like the least about the LGBTQ community is their unwillingness to understand that sometimes people think differently than they do. And if you don't say everything exactly the way they want you to say it, then you suddenly become public enemy number one. And nowhere was that more apparent than in the last video I did concerning gay marriage. Because in the video where I talked about the decision by the Texas Supreme Court, a lot of gay people ended up in my comments upset with me. And upon looking further into it, I really do believe that this is all a trap. And if I know the LGBTQ community, they're definitely going to take the bait. So if you haven't noticed the pattern with the LGBTQ community, they are always willing to go for panic over actually working the process, or at the very least staying informed. And in my honest opinion, I just think that the LGBTQ community is addicted to the adrenaline and the rush that goes with the panic. Otherwise, they would stay a little more current on what's going on instead of panicking every time something new comes down the pike, whether or not it's warranted. Like this guy on TikTok recently got the gay community in a frenzy when he posted this.
So on November 7th, the Supreme Court is going to hold a conference to see if they're going to overturn a ruling on same-sex marriage in America.
And the problem I have with this is it's not accurate information. The Supreme Court isn't going to hold a conference to see if they're going to overturn gay marriage. They're going to hold a private meeting to decide whether or not they'll listen to a case that challenges Obergefell, which, if you're not familiar, Obergefell was a decision that legalized gay marriage nationwide. And then after this private meeting, it could take several days or even several weeks for them to decide whether or not they'll actually hear the case. So when they make it sound like November 7th is the big day and everything's going to happen then, and I saw people in this guy's comments that were worried about whether or not they were going to be able to get married after that particular date. And then the responses were making it seem like, well, you better hurry up and do it before November 7th. It really made no sense at all. And had these people just done a little bit of homework on their own, they would know this. And that's another thing that bothers me about the LGBT community, and why I say they're always looking for panic over process, is because rather than just Google it and read for themselves what's going on, everybody is getting all of their news from TikTok, which TikTok usually doesn't have the most accurate information because so many people are rushing to put stuff out just to get clicks, so they don't bother checking into anything. They just go ahead and post it and are like, I'm gonna put this out there and I don't care if it's right information or wrong information. People will click on it, people will watch it, people will want to hear what I have to say.
Which, if the case is overturned, will end constitutional protections for same-sex marriage.
Well, the gay community should have thought about this when they were supporting, or at least staying quiet through all the TQ plus madness. Trans and queer madness is what I'm talking about right now. A lot of the stuff that I cover on this channel, a lot of the stuff that has people thinking that gays are supportive of this nonsense because so many gays kept quiet about it. So now that there's something on the line, suddenly you start noticing the gay community is really starting to turn off to the TQ plus, and they're somewhat militant about it. And I almost feel like, why don't you guys just go down with the ship, since just a couple of months ago you were also supportive of it, or at least willing to keep your mouth shut about it because it wasn't anything for you on the line. But now that gay marriage could be at stake, suddenly the gay community is waking up and being like, we don't want to be involved with that. Well, maybe you should have thought about that a little bit sooner, because the gay community staying quiet when all of that was going on has led people to believe that we're all a bunch of freaks and that we have to be stopped. And a lot of people saw gay marriage as the slippery slope that would lead to everything that's happening now.
And my question about all this is simple. Why?
I'm glad you asked. And I know this is all a lead up to your crash out, I'm an ally post that you're trying to put up that nobody needs, that's really just enabling bad behavior. And again, encouraging gay people to keep their heads buried in the sand while the entire world happens around them, and then all of a sudden waking up and acting like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. They're gonna take gay marriage from us? No, what will we do? Get a hold of yourselves, Mary, because your panic does us no good in this moment. But to get back to your question of why, it's actually very simple. Kim Davis, the former county clerk from Kentucky that refused to issue marriage licenses for gay couples, is asking that the Supreme Court revisit the Obergefell case because she's trying to avoid paying $100,000 in damages to the gay men that she refused to issue licenses to. So this is a part of her due process, which I'm sure a person like this is all about due process when it comes to illegal immigrants. But suddenly, when it's a United States citizen that actually wants to exercise her due process, now it's a big why.
Why?
I'm kind of the opposite, but I get where you're coming from. Then at the same time, whether or not I agree with this woman, she is a United States citizen, she is owed due process, and I will not begrudge her for exercising that right. But if it makes you feel any better, the legal experts and journalists that actually follow this kind of stuff don't really think it's very likely that the court will hear her case anyway.
I think the court will overwhelmingly reject this petition. There may be one or two dissents from Thomas or Alito because they want to reiterate their opposition to marriage equality as a precedent, but I think the odds are exceedingly unlikely that the full court takes it up, in part because what Davis is really trying to do here is get out from under the $100,000 in damages that she owes to those two men in the video at the top of the hour, to whom she denied a marriage license. Her attack on Obergefell is almost tacked on as an afterthought in this petition, and I think the justices will read this as more of a cynical effort by her lawyers to get more attention to the case and perhaps more fundraising dollars than a good faith legal effort to have the court revisit a landmark precedent.
And another reason that they don't think that this is a good case for the Supreme Court to take is because Kim Davis has already been turned down 3 times by the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals. And they also don't think that it's a good case for the Supreme Court to take because Kim Davis took the law into her own hands.
She not only refused to issue licenses to that couple, which she did 3 times, but also instructed her whole office to do the same. Taking the law into your own hands is far beyond the rights of any kind of religious liberty you may have. So this is not a great case for them. And I will say, when she first filed a case in Kentucky, she said she wasn't trying to overturn Obergefell. And that also just tells us a lot about why this is not a great case for the court to take.
So all in all, and I can't repeat this enough, this does not seem like a good case for the Supreme Court to take, but don't let me stop you from panicking. You seem to be on a roll.
What makes you think that you could dictate what other people do that have nothing to do with you?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that question, and I'm glad you put it that way, because this is where things get a little bit sticky, and it's definitely the LGBTQ community's fault. Some people will tell you or try to make it sound like gay marriage has been good for everybody, but gay marriage hasn't been good for people that the LGBTQ community have tried to force to provide services for these gay marriages, or the people that they've tried to force to perform their marriages for them. So while some will say things like,
in the end, with marriage, what we have is something that's just been great for couples, great for their kids, great for society, great for the economy, and there's no real problems that people can point to.
Others would say that because the LGBTQ community wants to force people to do things that they don't want to do or feel violates their freedom of speech rights, that's where gay marriage has become a problem. And that's a part of why I do see what these people are saying. Because like I showed in the beginning of this video, you have certain judges and other people that can officiate these weddings, but instead, LGBT people want to force people that don't want to be involved to do things that they don't want to do. And the reason that gay people or LGBTQ people are pushing this is because they want to feel like everybody accepts them. And I don't really feel like that has to be part of the deal if gay people are just after the rights that marriage provides them. To me, once we start getting to that, it really does seem to be more about power and control than you actually getting the rights that gay marriage provides. And we shouldn't forget that the Supreme Court has already decided in favor of a couple of the businesses that have chosen not to offer their services to same-sex couples. By the way, like, comment, and subscribe. We're on our way to 100,000 subscribers, hoping we can do it before the end of the year. When you hit the subscribe button, make sure you click the bell, select all notifications so you know every time I upload. So while the Supreme Court may not in fact be willing to hear Kim Davis's arguments, I really do feel that if the LGBTQ community tries to push Texas judges to perform marriages that they don't want to perform, that could actually in the future end up forcing the Supreme Court's hand.
It's not a big secret that on both sides of the political spectrum, lawyers poke around for plaintiffs that can produce a good case to take to the Supreme Court.
And if that does actually happen, most experts think that that might not turn out the best for the gay community.
The court adopts now this history and tradition test for determining whether a constitutional right exists if it's not expressed in the Constitution. There's nothing anywhere in the Constitution about marriage. There's nothing about dignity, and gay marriage wasn't introduced legally until the early 2000s in the country of the Netherlands. So as much as I think it would be egregious to take this case up, I think if the court takes it up, it would be very easy under existing precedent in the last few years for this majority to justify sending marriage back to the states. It's not making marriages null and void, gay marriages. It would be doing what it did with abortion and say, listen, it's not in the Constitution. You gotta argue for it before the state legislatures. And moving forward, it's up to the states to make this determination. I think that's a very viable option with this particular Supreme Court majority.
And this is a part of where people get mad at me, because I really do feel that as gay people, we should fight for something that doesn't share the name marriage. Because in this country, traditionally, marriage has been defined as being between one man and one woman. Barack Obama said it.
Marriage is the union between a man and a woman.
Joe Biden said it.
Marriage is between a man and a woman.
Hillary Clinton said it.
Marriage is not just a bond, but a sacred bond between a man and a woman.
Bill Clinton said it.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
And your mother and father have probably said it too. And before anybody jumps in the comments and starts telling me about the history of marriage, I know that the history of marriage hasn't always been about love. And I know that it predates Christianity. And I know that marriage hasn't always had a religious connotation. That's why I thought love wins and love is love were such stupid mottos when it came to marriage equality. Because as gay people, that's not even the reason that we were looking to get married originally. The reason we were looking to get married originally was to protect gay people's rights when the AIDS crisis was going on and allow them access to be able to see their partners. That's when the push for gay marriage really started. And those were a few of the reasons that gay marriage was so important to us as a community back then. So I know while everybody else will try to argue everything else with me and talk to me about Mesopotamia and whatever else you guys are going to mention in the comments, I get it. I know what you're saying. But in this country, which I always tell you guys, we have to deal with where we are and what the history of this country is. It's always been considered to be between one man and one woman. So that's why I think the LGBTQ community fighting for a constitutional amendment is the best way to go. So if it's our lobbyists we have to push, or if it's somebody like an AOC or a Bernie Sanders or any of the politicians that are constantly giving lip service about how much they support gay people and gay marriage, or the LGBTQIA plus community, that's who we need to shake down and say, hey, you need to draw this up for us. This is something that's very important to us. This is something we need. We're not worried about the title of marriage. What we actually want is a contract that's identical to marriage, even if you have to call it something else. But of course, gay people will never go for that because the LGBTQ community is so dead set and determined to be like everybody else that they'll never actually agree to it. Even though I think it would be pretty hard for anybody to argue why we, as tax-paying Americans, can't have an option that would offer us the same rights and protections as any other American. And when I say I would want this contract to be identical to marriage, I mean I would want this contract to be identical to marriage. So for me, it's not about us losing any particular rights. It's about us not fighting for the word marriage. Because if we're offered all of the same protections as a marriage, also the same tax benefits as an actual marriage, then why would we actually be caught up on a particular word that really isn't a part of our history as a community? But as long as we try to call it marriage, evangelicals and zealots will definitely object to it. And I know some people will say that religious groups shouldn't have a say in it anyway, and that there's a separation in church and state, and I get that. And ideally, being able to lean on that would work out perfectly for us. But that strategy hasn't worked for the last at least 30 years, so I don't know why everybody believes it would work now. And to those people, I would say if you want to continue to fight for that, if you think that's the best course of action because you're so caught up on the word marriage, then go ahead and do that. But what you're going to have to understand is that that kind of thinking is what keeps us wrapped up in red tape and keeps gay marriage from actually getting any kind of resolution. And I know that adding a constitutional amendment isn't the easiest thing in the world to do, but it is the only thing that will offer us any type of permanence. And considering that the Respect for Marriage Act was able to go through, I think we really do have a shot at the constitutional amendment that would provide us a contract that is identical to marriage, but just doesn't actually use the word marriage. So to tell you guys what I think the play from the LGBTQ community should be, is that I think, providing that they don't pick up the Kim Davis case, we don't make any waves at all. We don't try to force anybody to do anything, and especially we don't try to force anything on the judges in Texas, because if that happens, that could actually end up forcing the Supreme Court's hand and make them actually have to reconsider the Obergefell decision. And even though people will get mad at me for saying that I don't think that we should force the Supreme Court's hand, what I think a lot of people forget is that both Justice Alito and Justice Thomas have expressed that they do have some desire to overturn the Obergefell decision. And I don't think a lot of people in the LGBTQ community pay enough attention to really know the threat that they're under right now if they decide to force this issue with the Supreme Court at this very moment. And to me, if the LGBTQ community decides to try to challenge these judges in Texas, which I have no doubt they will, that will give the Supreme Court their excuse to go ahead and hear challenges to Obergefell, and I'd be willing to bet that it'll get struck down at that point. So that's the reason I caution against trying to force people to bow down, because right now is not the time, gay community. So in the meantime, while we have that band-aid that is the Supreme Court decision, we have our lobbyists, our legislators, and our LGBTQ rights organizations really push to get a constitutional amendment introduced. Because even though support for marriage equality has somewhat slipped with the general public in the last few years, I think there are still enough people that support us that we could actually make something go through. But again, even if you talk to some of the people that are the most cool about gay marriage and the most accepting of LGBTQ, there are a fair amount of those people that do feel that there is a difference between marriage and gay marriage. So you're even muddying the fight for those people when you insist on calling it marriage. It has to be about the rights and not about the title. That's what I'm tired of with the gay community, and that's what I'll never understand, and why I honestly think the gay marriage will probably never be fully legal with any type of permanence. I think we'll always stay in this Supreme Court decision being held together by a thread, because even right now, if the Supreme Court had to decide on it, there's a good chance it would get overturned 6-3. So to me, the Obergefell case is basically like a band-aid, and a constitutional amendment would be like a surgery. So we're using a band-aid for something that really needs a surgery. But I don't know if it's laziness or if it's just an unwillingness to compromise in any way. But there definitely does have to be a reason that this hasn't been resolved. And if you ask me, I think the reason is probably because once we got the Obergefell decision, suddenly then the LGBTQ activists decided that was good enough and moved on to trans issues because that was going to be more lucrative. And that's honestly the way I feel about it. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you guys want to see a video of me talking about Lily Tino and the street interview that probably didn't go the way Lily Tino wanted it to, click the video on your screen. Other than that, as always, thank you for watching. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.